Hello and welcome back to the CKM Red Rugby League channel, bringing you the second of our brand new shows, looking back at the last 7 days of Rugby League action in a new show we call Last Week in Rugby League. The show's a little bit different, it's got a bit of a strange format to it as we run Thursday to Thursday. The English Super League that kicks off on a Thursday night, so it only makes sense that we go from the first available game all the way up to the last game there. Of course, it'd be a little bit strange and a little bit boring if it was just me here waffling the news to you. So, of course, my co-host Luke Jobson is here to help me out.
Oh dear. That's one way to bring in the new show, Mr. Matthew, right?
So with that, we make a starting, of course, on Thursday night. Super League New Boys Toronto taking on Wigan as they continue to struggle to adjust to the world of Super League, finding out how different it is to the Championship.
They've had a rough start. They're 0-3 now. Sonny Bill Williams, wasn't at the game this time, celebrating the birth of his fourth child. But one would think that Toronto would have been a little more prepared. They still have players like Josh McCrone and Ricky Latelli, who have had plenty of NRL experience, but it's just a different beast, this Super League competition.
Yeah, and that's the thing, they're continuing to struggle to adjust, and the injuries are coming thick and fast as well. In that big loss, not only did they lose the game, but they also lost a few more players. Gadwin Springer picked up a nasty head knock, you'll see that in the video here. And that ruled him out subsequently for this week's game as well. And with injuries coming thick and fast, Toronto are really thinning out their roster very quickly here.
They only had, 21 to start the season on the roster?
So they had 23 rostered players, 21 on the cap. But the big issue there is that, of course, Toronto came out at the beginning of the week saying, we've spent up, we need cap dispensation. Which begs the question, where was the strategy there? What were they thinking in regards to having your usual two marquee players that don't go against your salary cap, and then of course the 21 taking up £1.8 million on the cap as well. So if they're going to let ill discipline creep in and players are going to end up before the review panel as well, it's going to be a very, very long season. Not only for Toronto supporters, but for Toronto players too.
It's a rough time to be a Wolfpack supporter, but it's still very early on in the season. They've got the players. They're able definitely to bring it back. And there were a couple of highlights. It's not as if they haven't been a competitive side, but it's very hard when you have 21 on the cap, 23 available. One of your marquee players not in the country, and then you have guys going out with injury. It's going to be, they've got the talent to stay up, but it's whether they're going to be able to stay healthy enough to be competitive down the stretch. They need to come back, and they need to come back quickly. It's going to be pretty rough. Looking at their next couple of games, they've got Warrington and St. Helens. Eesh. Okay. Well, have fun, Toronto. Alright, moving on to Friday with the NRL Nines, the first day, and I tell you what, it was a rip snorter of an opener. We had plenty of action with the NRL women's teams, a couple of injuries that we'll talk about when we do the injury wrap-up on Saturday, but a couple of boilovers. The Parramatta Eels losing 13-10 off the back of a Corey Hawira try with a couple of minutes left. A couple of absolute thrashings. The Dragons smoking the Sharks. You've got the Panthers on the back of Viliami kick-out going up 35-0 over the Roosters. And then Matt, a man who not only is synonymous with NRL, but had a quick stint in the Super League. Kurt Gidley, the 37-year-old, looked like he'd never left the field in the 34-0 win for the Knights.
A few shock results in there. Obviously, Parramatta were the outright favourites for the Nines, and it was a little bit disappointing the way that they started off their tournament. It came as a big shock considering that how many stars they brought with them as well. But it just goes to show that Nines is a whole different game. You can bring your star-studded lineup, but at the end of the day, the speed, the agility, all big factors, and you saw that with that Cowboys team, just how good they were with sort of those younger guys that are really exciting coming through. But again, we'll cover them in a little bit more detail later. Back over to the Northern Hemisphere, and Super League was back underway for Friday night fixtures. The televised game for Friday night, of course, Salford versus Huddersfield. A really close contest, unfortunately marred at the very end by this Kevin Brown headbutt. Kevin Brown getting a yellow card for that, getting sent for 10, which is as good as a red card when there's only 5 minutes of the game left to play. Aidan Caesar then subsequently kicking the Giants to a 12-10 win just moments later off the back of that sin binning itself.
Yeah, it was a brain fart, to say the least, from Kevin Brown. Gone for 2 games, and that's... who in their right mind? And I understand it's the heat of the moment, and yeah, a tight game in a big time kind of early season game, but you can't do that. That's just dumb. He's put his team in a really bad position there, Kevin Brown, and 2 games, he's probably lucky, having just seen the footage, and obviously seeing it before, but 2 games, he's really lucky not to get more, if I'm being brutally honest.
Yeah, and it probably comes from him having quite a good previous. He's not really regarded as a dirty player, but for some reason, something got to him there. He's lost his head, and then just decided to plant one flush. There's no excusing it, despite what his coach tried to do, saying that he was just trying to reposition his head and he got it in the wrong place. But again, it's match review panel inconsistency that people are really screaming out for, as Tavita Sate got 3 matches for what was deemed reckless contact with the head. Chris Hill, exactly the same. But Kevin Brown getting 2 games for a deliberate headbutt, leaving a lot of people dumbfounded by that one. Elsewhere in Super League on Friday night, the Leeds Rhinos were back in action, this time taking on Hull KR after a disappointing opening day defeat against Hull FC. The Rhinos bouncing back in spectacular fashion though, taking out a 52-10 win against the Robins. A real bounce back from Leeds, looking really reinvigorated after that. What's your thoughts?
It's always good to bounce back after a disappointing performance, but to bounce back with a 52-10 win over Hull KR, you can't really do much better than that. Conrad Hull looks like he's fitting in well in Super League. He was able to get over for the Rhinos. Honestly, there's not much that you can say about it. They wanted to come back. They needed to come back and have a good performance to get some momentum early on in the season. And 52-10 is that's a handy way to start it off.
Of course, the big talking point out of the NRL Nines was unfortunately the Cody Ramsey try. Try, no try. Off the back of the on-field decision of try, and people complaining all kinds and kicking up all kinds of a fuss about the fact that the video referee isn't used in the Nines. It's just becoming too much of a challenge at this point. It's becoming a rock, paper, scissors of video ref versus no video ref, 2 refs versus 1 ref, and captain's challenge coming in as well. If you want the fluidity of the game, and you just want raw action, on-field calls only, then that's what Nines is designed to be. If you want the professional, clean-cut stuff, then by all means, bring in the 2 refs, bring in the whole works, bring in the bunker.
Yeah, look, I'm fine with there with there not being a video ref for the Nines. And I can understand if that ball had just hit the sideline, and they missed that, but the dude's planted the ball. And no, don't take anything away from Ramsey. It was a fantastic effort just to get there. But the dude's planted that well outside. Belinda Clark, I think it was, who was the touchy on that near side. No way she could have seen it. You got two bodies. The corner post was already down, I think. She's caught out in no man's land. Not for her to be at fault there, but I tell you what, that ended up getting taking the Panthers out of the tournament as well. So
yeah, I mean that's the thing. If it had been an earlier pool game, I think people would have been a little less fussed. But the fact that the Panthers went all the way to the final is the big issue here. Off that one call, and people are not going to let anybody forget that or live that down anytime soon. It's going to be a big talking point for a while to come around the Nines. But this is the issue. If you focus on that one error, then you might as well go back and focus on every error. And then just go back and rewrite the score, because there'll have been a forward pass in the build-up. There'll have been, a potential of an obstruction somewhere that got missed. And these errors happen, and we've got to forget referees are human too, and they are going to make errors. But unfortunately, it was always going to cop massive heat when it came to the fact that it dumped them out.
Well, what can you do? You just got to move on now. And speaking of moving on, how about that Courtney Hill tackle? That was something of absolute pristine beauty. The Broncos not too far away from the try line. Hill's coming across in covered defense, and then just absolutely slams the player on her back, a la WWE body slam. That was. Matty, we know that there's been some massive hits in women's rugby, but my goodness, that one nearly takes the cake.
That's the thing, I see Courtney play week in, week out, so for those of you who don't know, I volunteer and have done for years now over at the Leeds Rhinos Women, so I know Courtney real well. I'm so used to seeing her, getting down around the legs, those incredible runs that got her that Woman of Steel award. But that is the first time I have ever seen Courtney lift someone up and absolutely plant them on their number. How she managed to sneak that banjo through immigration with her is beyond me. Of course, in those two tournaments, the St George women taking out a big win as well, over a heavily favoured Brisbane side. Nobody saw that one coming, but those Dragons women really turned up. Kezia Apps had a huge game. Isabel Kelly really stepped up. Of course, Jess Surgis as well, all having fantastic games there.
I mean, you've just listed three staples of the Australian Gillaroos right there in Apps. Yeah, Apps and Kelly, they're very quickly starting to make a name for themselves in the world of rugby league. Isabel Kelly, of course, for those who don't remember, only a couple of years ago had a double in the first ever standalone Women's State of Origin game against Queensland over at North Sydney Oval. So she's a fantastic player, with a very bright future, and just Surge a staple of the Gillaroos, an out-and-out leader. It's very hard not to brag about how good those teams, the Gillaroos are with those three in the setup, and the Dragons. No disrespect to the Broncos. They've got Ali Brigginshaw, who arguably is one of the best players in women's rugby league right now, if not rugby league as a whole. But the Dragons just took the Broncos to the woodshed, and a big time win for them to start off their campaign.
Yeah, and one thing that I definitely noticed in that final as well is you can see when a team's so not used to being behind, you start to see composure going, mistakes being made. Brigginshaw, as soon as the game started to get away, her kicking game was off. She was making runs that she wouldn't usually make and picking passes that she wouldn't usually choose, when the Broncos have got such free reign of the park usually and a decent margin on the scoreboard. So I think for them as well, it's going to be a really good thing, and it's only going to G them up for the season as well, because teams have to be used to losing at some point. They have to get used to being up against adversity in that respect.
And of course, you have the Cowboys lifting the men's trophy. The Cowboys coming off a really bad season last year in the NRL, their first season without JT, and they've always been relatively good when it comes to NRL Nines, but you have the likes of Michael Morgan leading the field around, and I think this year, never mind the fact that they did really well to get up in the NRL Nines tournament. I've got them as just a little bit of a smoky this year. I don't think they'll win it overall, but I've got them as a smoky to cause some havoc and run deep into September.
And do you know what? They've got some selection headaches to come. Drinkwater is sensational all the way throughout. If it wasn't for the fact that you've just put a $1 million contract on the table for Val Holmes, you'd say that he had a very good shout at the one jersey. Tabuai Fido, apologies if I get his name wrong. What a tournament he had. I mean, the very Josh Adokar-esque, shades of Bevan French in that prime first Parramatta season that he had. Just lightning, incredible confidence for an 18-year-old. Really, really lit the tournament up, put in some fantastic performances.
It's going to be a big time year. A big time year for the Cowboys. It wouldn't surprise me, though. And you hate to see it because you have the likes of Jake Clifford at the Cowboys who's been biding his time and eventually got the shot last year. But Drinkwater is going to put a lot of pressure on Jake Clifford for, I think, a starting half spot.
Yeah. I tell you what, not a lot of people have talked about him, but Cohen Hez, a reinvigorated Cohen Hez, looking very, very good and definitely putting his name out there for an origin spot right from the word go if he carries on the way that he did at the Nines.
If Cohen Hess can carry the form in terms of origin from Game 3 last year, then I have no doubt that he's going to be there. No doubt whatsoever.
And our final Saturday point, of course, the return of Isreal Folau to Rugby League, scoring with his first touch over in France against the Castleford Tigers. But that wasn't the only headline coming out of that game, as what has now been dubbed as Flaggate, as fans were reportedly told to remove their LGBTQ support flags by security.
Yeah, it's opened up a whole can of worms, and we'll go into it more with the Sunday recap. But the thing that Catalans need to know is that now that they have signed Isreal Folau and they know the history, they know what's been going on, and every club, I remember reading, every club was opposed to the signing, but the RFL came out and said that, well, there's nothing that we can really do to stop it. He hasn't broken any of our rules or regulations, but there is something in the contract that says that if he does post anything like he did last year, that he's done and dusted, no compensation required. So it's a touchy subject for a lot of people. So Catalans really they need to be careful. Folau needs to be really careful, and I think the RFL as a whole need to realise that there's a big hole here that could very well keep being dug on if they don't stamp out some of the stuff that inevitably is going to happen this year.
And then moving over to Sunday, of course, top of Catalan's agenda was to respond to that controversy, releasing a statement in which they said one fan was told to remove a flag, not to remove it and put it away, but because it was covering an advertising hoarding. Is it an excuse and a little bit of a cover-up? The rugby league conspiracy theory community seem to think so. It's very. They said, they said this, they said that. it is what it is. At the end of the day, rugby league as a sport needs to find a way to move past this, because otherwise it's just going to become a recurring segment that nobody really wants to be a part of.
And it's, like I said, it's something that's going to keep being harped upon. Hopefully, that nothing else will happen in terms of it. But there's not much we can do. But no point in us harping onto it. We've got Wakefield getting up over Warrington, and the Saints in the end getting up over Hull FC. So a successful round 2 for them in the Super League, as well as that massive storm. And Matty, you can talk more about it, but that storm that was over there over the weekend, that caused some havoc all over the place.
Yep, so straight out the back of one storm and into another, of course the UK still being hammered by torrential rain and wind, and over in the north of England they were certainly feeling it with this ridiculous pass over here. As you can see, backwards out the hand, and then 10 metres forward as well. And then over to, very local to myself, over in Hunslet, this absolutely insane 100 metre dropout. Good luck fielding that one.
It went, 60 or 70 on the fly, if not longer. And yeah, just, you haven't seen a dropout like that in about 4 or 5 years. And you only see 100 metre dropouts with the wind as it is. So just it's one of those things that if you're an opposition team, you just laugh at it and you giggle, and you just try and work your way through it.
Up until the point where you realise that you've got to try and kick into that wind yourself for the dropout that you've just been penned with. Over to Monday now, and plenty of international news to discuss. Of course, the big one, the announcement that Sweden and Holland will face off over at the Craven Park KCOM as part of a triple header on May 31st as a Super League opener. Really great news. And then, of course, Serbia's women announcing that they'll be heading to Greece, taking on Greece in Larissa as part of only their second ever international. So great news on the international front there.
I think, not taking anything away from the Sweden-Holland game, the fact that Serbia's women are going for their second ever game is fantastic. But Greece, Rugby League in Greece, we already know how, with the issues that they've had, their men qualifying for the first ever World Cup, the fact that they can go into Serbia can go to Greece and just be able to have a game in Greece. That's massive news.
Yeah, of course. Then in other news as well, Kevin Brown, of course, as we mentioned earlier, handed a 2-match suspension, but he wasn't the only man that was in trouble with the RFL, as for some reason not yet announced, Ben Thaler was suspended by the RFL pending an internal investigation. Now, if you believe everything that you see online, Ben Thaler has committed all kinds of crimes, everything from inappropriate touching to a bank robbery. Twitter really does have a way of articulating these things and putting the world to rights for things that they've not realistically done. So in regards to the controversy, there isn't any controversy until the RFL realistically come out and say what it is that he's either guilty or not guilty of. But people should realistically bear in mind that everything is hearsay, take everything with a pinch of salt, and just be a little bit respectful online. I mean, nobody deserves to be copping heat like this.
I mean, once the investigation is finished and it comes out, then potentially we'll know more. We're not going to speculate on here. We're not rinky-dink journalists here that will try and break news for anything. If we know something, we'll say it. But hopefully whatever it is that has happened is I say only minor, but the fact that he's being stood down is not a good sign. But Matty, we know what happened to Isaiah Parise, the Broncos standing him down. He was charged with drug offences by Queensland Police on Monday. The NRL Integrity Unit has been notified about that one. It's not a good start for him to the season. He was seen as potentially someone who could break into the 17 and have a big impact this year for the Broncos, but he, for at least the foreseeable future, will be on the sidelines.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that a young talent's been lost under these circumstances, but no room for it in the game, unfortunately. All we can realistically hope for is that the investigation and all the matters are in hand, and of course Isaiah gets the support that he needs during this difficult time, because no doubt he'll have had his eyes on a long playing career, as every player does, and now some bad decisions have took that away from him, so you can only hope that he's getting the support that he needs at this time. Over to Tuesday, and the only real news of note was involving Salford. 2 transfer movements for them. The first one was an inward movement, taking in Oliver Roberts from Huddersfield on a season-long loan. Of course, Huddersfield with the option to recall him on 28 days' notice. And then a slightly surprising one, and that was Adam Walker leaving the club by mutual consent. No news on where he'll be popping up or why that decision was taken. But we'll just have to wait and see if he does reappear on the scene in Super League. Over to Wednesday, and a few injury worries cropping up in the NRL, starting with a double ACL news break. Bunty Afoa will miss large portions of the season due to a full ACL tear that will require surgery. So our thoughts were with Bunty. We wish him a speedy recovery. And then Matt Lodge as well, pulling up in training. Early reports suggested that it was a full tear, but scans have revealed that it's not as serious as first thought, and he should be back and ready in a couple months at most, rather than the suspected 12 months turnaround time of a regular ACL injury.
Bunty Afoa, really unlucky for him. He was projected potentially to be a starting prop this season for the Warriors, a standout player last year, really big impact player off the bench. As for Matt Lodge, it came out that it's something that he's dealt with for quite a while now. This ACL, more a re-aggravation of the partial tear than anything else. He'll get surgery on it potentially at the end of the season. As of right now, it's more about maintenance, making sure that partial tear doesn't end up becoming a full tear and 6 or 9, 12 months even on the sidelines, because he has speak what you want of him in terms of things that he's done in the past that has been covered ad nauseum by Rugby League media, but on the field Matt Lodge has been superb for Brisbane.
Yeah, and he's not the only player that's going to be missing round 1, as well as Penrith announced that Dylan Edwards will also miss round 1 after undergoing ankle surgery. They're hoping that he should be back by at latest round 3. So hoping for a speedy recovery for Dylan as well. Only 24 years of age, and quite a promising career ahead of him after a good season last year.
Yeah, let's see. We'll see what the Panthers can do as we move on. And Matty, the team that kind of we're pretty fond of, the Red Star Belgrade team, have been announced as one of 11 teams in the Balkan Super League. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Over 5 countries, I believe.
Yep, 11 teams, 5 countries. The only league like it in the world. The Balkan Super League returns for its 3rd season. And of course, our boys, got the jersey right behind me here, the Red Star Belgrade Rugby League Club, looking to make it 3 out of 3 as they take on teams from the likes of Bulgaria and Bosnia. No Albanian and Greek teams this year. They've opted to focus on their own league, so best of luck to them. But yep, if you want to see any of that action, you can do through our streaming partner Sportsflick. We'll leave a link to them in the description as well. But it's going to be a hell of a tournament.
There's something that I guess I didn't really realise until the announced teams came out. A team from Montenegro this year.
Teams have been sourced from all over the Balkan regions. It's going to be another fantastic tournament, and it is true expansion at its absolute core. And speaking of expansion, of course, everybody's favourite expansion team, you love to hate them, the Toronto Wolfpack, announced the 4-week trial of Tony Gigo, the former Catalans player, and Q Rugby League losing its mind once more. As everybody quoted, they're up to cap. We don't know what that's potentially going on in the background there, but hopefully he'll do well at Toronto and ease some of those injury worries over there too.
Look, you know more of the salary cap than I do over there, Matty, but the fact that he's getting a trial, it's good for him. Hopefully, as you mentioned, he's able to have a solid month, and then from there just run it through and get himself a more permanent potential starting gig somewhere down the line.
And then finally we finish on Thursday. The first major news coming out of Thursday was that the Captain's Challenge would be trialled in the upcoming All-Stars game. Each captain getting 10 seconds once per game, to challenge a decision that they feel is wrong, to be reviewed and try to get the decision overturned. So, more Rugby League innovation. Only time will tell if it's going to work.
I honestly am not a fan of it. I saw it implemented in the under-20s when the 20s were a thing for the NRL, and it basically tried to turn an 80-minute game that goes over 2 hours into an 80-minute game that could go 2.5, 3 out. I don't want to see it. Is it a good idea? Yes, potentially in time. The All-Stars game, I'm glad it's being trialled there and not anywhere else, but only time will tell as to whether it's going to be a good idea.
And sticking with the topic of the All-Stars, of course, the big news as well with that game is that 9-year-old Quaden Bayles will lead the team out after his mother posted a video of him distraught online after suffering another day of bullying down to a condition that he has absolutely no control over. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's a really powerful video, and we can only be thankful that everything is in hand now, and that Quaden's life will hopefully be much easier after the attention that it drew. But it's obviously very unfortunate that it had to come this much into the public's eye for anything to be done about it.
And I'm not going to harp on it too much, Matty. You've summed it up really well. But just to anyone and everyone that is watching this, just don't be a piece of dirt. Don't harp on someone. Don't make fun of someone because of something they can't control. Don't make fun of someone. Full stop. But especially, Quaden's 9 years old. The poor life just starting. There's influential people around the world who have uncontrollable diseases and issues and they just go on and make the bet. Just don't. It's not that hard to be nice to someone. Just don't make fun of folks. Just be nice to everyone. Don't let anyone get you down, and just try and make a really good impact on this world. That's all we can ask for.
Absolutely. And then in the final pieces of news, Brian Noble sensationally walking out of Toronto by mutual consent, a man who's been there since its inception. A very vague statement released by the club considering how long he's been around for, not alluding to any one cause as to why Brian would be stepping down. But obviously there's something's been said, or words have been had, or maybe it is just that Brian Noble thought it was the best time to potentially step away from the club.
It's left more questions than answers. It definitely has, and other news has come out that a couple of Toronto backers want to potentially buy a stake in the Melbourne Storm. The Storm owners are changing their leadership, their ownership structure. So that came out a couple of hours ago as we record this. So I'm thinking, I'm not by no means saying that this is it, but potentially Noble didn't want a part of that, and as a result, he's kind of walked away, and Toronto really haven't stepped in the way. So that's where the mutual consent comes from. But it's definitely going to be something that in the next couple of weeks will be one to keep an eye out for.
Well, as the name of the show, that was last week in Rugby League. We hope that that has filled in any of the blanks for you. We hope that you've really enjoyed the show. We have a great time making it for you guys. So, leave a comment, leave a like. Let us know what we could be doing better to make it an even better show for you guys. So, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next week.